Thank you everyone for showing up this evening, giving up NCIS edition. I think we'll go around the room with names. Don LaHaye, Vice Chair.
Sue Sinclair, Director.
Lori Emery, staff.
Tina Ruth, Montpelier.
Sam Anderson, Central Vermont Economic Development Corporation.
Laura Hill Eubanks, Northfield.
Julie Potter, I'm the alternate from East Montpelier.
Faye Terry Silver, Marshfield.
Dick Payne, Cabot.
Tim Carver, East Montpelier.
Jenna Shatney, Woodbury.
Mike Miller, City of Barry.
Rolf Mueller, Callis.
Bill Aaron, Worcester.
Dave Strong, Plainfield.
Larry Hebert, Williamstown.
Byron Alley, Berrytown. Gunnar McCain, Waterbury.
Ron Krause, Middlesex.
Brian Fitzgerald, Duxbury.
Carol Chamberlain, Facein.
Jackie Casino, staff. Kim McKee, staff.
And we have a few members in the back.
Hi, I'm Kim Swayze, and I've been newly elected to the Select Board East Montpelier.
Carol Ellison from Central Vermont Economic Development.
George Malik, Representative Orange.
Okay. We'll have the exception of the minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes?
I'd make the motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
Any discussion on the minutes? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and staff reports. Susan?
I don't really have anything to add, only to draw your attention to a couple of items. First of all, we are hosting a zoning administrators workshop on June 18th at our offices. And there's going to be a presentation by Vermont Department of Housing and Community Development on the Village Center Designation Program, which we talked about here last month. There's an E911 coordinator workshop on June 5th and census training on how to use the census numbers, and that's scheduled for June 10th at our offices. And there is, as what I understand, there will be someone from the Census Bureau here that's going to be running that training. And then finally, I wanted to draw your attention, thanks to Kim's good work, we now have a Facebook page. So if you do Facebook, then like us, I guess that's the term. Find us on Facebook and like us. That's all I had. Any questions on staff reports?
We don't have to approve those, right?
No.
Okay, next on the agenda is the report on the election of officers and at-large members of the executive committee. Who is handling?
Me.
Go ahead, Larry.
Okay, 17 ballots are cast, which is more than a majority. And you have duly elected Don LaHaye as chair, Byron Atwood as vice chair, Michael Miller as treasurer, Tina Ruth as secretary, George Malik, David Strong, and Bob Warnick as at-large members of the executive committee. You're up.
How many votes?
17 ballots were cast.
I mean, how many voted for the chair and how many voted for the vice chair? 17 each one?
Yep.
All the way through?
There was one with 16.
We need to approve this.
No.
Okay, we now have to move on to the appointments to the Town Plan Review Committee for the Middlesex Town Plan Review. For volunteers.
Well, that's just, we have a town plan review committee, standing committee, but that's just if anybody was interested or one of the adjoining towns that wanted to serve on the committee. That's what, this is an opportunity to get on the committee.
Anyone else that's an adjoining town care to serve on that committee, the review committee for Middlesex?
What's the schedule again, Jackie?
May 23rd.
It's a little off, yes. So the Thursday would, at 4 o'clock at the CVRPC offices, we would go through staff notes and make a general, come to a consensus on a general recommendation to bring before the commission at large. Then the next meeting, so in June, we would make that recommendation.
Anyone ready to raise their hand and volunteer? Abutting towns, no one? Okay, so I guess the standing committee will take care of that. Okay.
If you want a copy, I have some extra ones.
We're moving right through the agenda here. Okay, we're at the consideration of the report of the Joint Committee on Consolidation and process for presenting to the municipal officials. We were going to set up a time limit of 5 minutes per person, but I don't think we're going to be too overrun here. But if you can keep your questions kind of short, and I think we're going to run across a lot of the questions will be the same that each one of us has. And the questions will be addressed to the committee, probably the committee chair, Gunnar McCain. And because quite frankly, I have as many questions probably as most of you. So I think we can go ahead and move on with, oh, by the way, we will be done at 9 p.m. All questions are shut off at 9 p.m. So the committee's done a great job, by the way. And we need to keep that in mind as we go through this process. And this is kind of like really the beginning stages of the process, as Gunnar will explain. He does a good job of explaining it, and he'll set us up to understand what the process is. Gunnar?
Sure. I'll start with a few brief comments. First, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Gunnar McCain from Waterbury. I've been a representative on this commission for almost 20 years. I've got about 4 terms as chair and 12 terms on the executive committee. And as far as this consolidation committee went, it was an absolute privilege to chair that committee. I've sat on several different committees over the years, and quite a few really. And this was probably one of the most thoughtful and productive of them all. And it really was a great group of people. A lot of great things happened. A lot of good input. And I'd like to thank all the committee members that were also involved in that. On the RPC side, that's Brian Atwood from Berrytown, Steve Fitzhugh, former commissioner from Northfield, resigned his seat here when he took a village trustee position. Mike Miller from Berry City, David Strong from Plainfield. On the Economic Development Corporation side, Josh Fitzhugh from Berlin, Carol Ellison from Berry, who's here tonight. Thank you, Carol. Peter Hood from Middlesex, Ed Larson from Montpelier, also here tonight. Thank you, Ed. And Greg Woodworth, also from Montpelier. Great job, everybody. That was really a great effort. So the report pretty much speaks for itself. We're not really here to advocate, although obviously most of us think it's a good idea. The committee members all felt it was, with one exception, felt it was a good thing and we should move forward and proceed with the consolidation. But really what we're here to do is to present information so that the municipal officials charged with deciding whether or not they should move forward have the appropriate information to make an informed decision. So we're here to listen to questions, to provide information, see where we can make sure we can get as much information out there as we can. We did spend a tremendous amount of time going over everything. We looked at the group's functions, the funding, the bylaws, committee structures, statutory issues, many other issues. And we've already seen several comments from various folks wondering if we looked at things like, multiple years of budgets. Well, we did look at that. Did we look at staffing issues? Yes, we looked at that. We looked at all the things, most of the comments and criticisms or questions that we've heard. We did look at these things, which is why we're happy to have a chance to explain that to the group at large. I guess the last thing is just to point out that it's also been suggested that there's some sort of a rush to get this thing done, and there's not. I'm not sure where that information originated, but somewhere along the line someone suggested that decisions needed to be made now, that municipal bodies needed to tell their reps how they felt about this issue because the vote was pending and was going to happen soon. That is definitely not the case. We're here to provide information tonight. We will have as many more meetings as is deemed appropriate and necessary to make sure that the municipal officials who need to have the information to make these decisions are well enough informed to make those decisions. So there is no hurry at all. It's going to be a back and forth for a while. The committee has offered to go to various towns that request an individual meeting and present information there, and we'll be willing to do that as we move forward. So that all being said, I guess I'd open it up to questions and ask that the other committee members who are here can certainly feel free to jump in at any time, and certainly some of them are more articulate than myself on several of these issues. So we'd be happy to hear from everybody before we're done. But questions, please.
Well, I'll start.
Oh, thank you, Dave. I was going to say, it's going to be a short meeting after all.
Yeah, my question basically is why?
Okay. Well, let's start with the premise that the purpose of the Central Vermont Regional Plan is to guide growth and development in the region. And that's a quote from the web page where the regional plan is on. How can one do good planning without considering economic development? One cannot. Economic development needs a lot of the services that we supply. Our infrastructure work, our planning work, our zoning bylaw work, our town plan work all connects into economic development. It just makes good sense. In fact, there was a VAPTA report. We didn't cite it in our report, but there was a VAPTA report from the date from it's called the Regional Services Report from January 15, 2011. And one of the things that they were asked to look at was regional planning and economic development, and that report identifies specific means by which regional planning can improve economic development outcomes. So it's something that we do. We have done, and it makes sense to put everybody in the same room. It will lead to better siting of larger projects, less demand for additional infrastructure construction, less conflict between developers and regulators, ultimately a better quality of life for all of Central Vermont because of all those reasons. That's why.
It couldn't be, and this end couldn't be advanced by collaboration rather than as it were merging.
We felt as a committee that merging would be the best solution. We did in fact evaluate a model that was more about co-location and collaboration than it was about consolidation. And our charge as a committee was to design the best organization we could design to serve these functions. We discarded the cooperation model in favor of the consolidation model because after much discussion and much review of all the available information, including the functions of the groups, the funding, etc., we came to the conclusion that that was the way to provide the best result, was to consolidate.
And you've done very good and very diligent work. I don't happen to agree with
Not everyone
the
will.
end, but I was amazed at how much work had been had been done and how much thought had been given to it, and I really applaud your efforts.
Thank you.
Yes?
Dick, why are you opposed to this specifically?
Because I think it dilutes the, it dilutes the influence of the towns. That's basically what it amounts to. It dilutes the influence of the towns. That's my feeling.
But if you have 23 members and then 35, I mean, that's an easy mathematical calculation.
That's a what?
Easy mathematical calculation.
That?
35 dilutes the power of each member compared to 23.
Oh, well, yes, if you look at it that way. I was looking at it a little differently, but I see that I agree. Anyway, that's why I'm opposed. It dilutes the influence of the towns.
I have a question, Gunnar. What is wrong with the current system? What improvements can be made in the current system to make it work better as far as economic development goes?
Consolidation with the EDC.
No, I mean, what's wrong with the system?
I don't think anyone is sitting here saying that what we have is broken. I think what we're sitting here saying is that it can be better. We can do better than we're doing. The Regional Planning Commission, as of now, has, I guess, 21 out of 23 representatives sitting. Up until a few months ago, that number was 17. 3 or 4 of those never showed up. So this has not been a well-attended meetings, period. They haven't. This has not. It's been suggested that low attendance maybe means it's a healthy organization because there's not a lot of controversy. I would suggest low attendance suggests you have an anemic organization that probably isn't accomplishing as much as it could. So I think the energy that these two groups could bring together, I think equals greater than the individual parts. I think the talent as well equals greater than the individual parts. And I think it can be done better than it's being done.
So you're saying the consolidation is already working because we've got more people here?
So far.
Well, yeah, exactly. Sure.
If I could add something to what Gunnar's saying, I think another part is this. The Regional Planning Commission has been in place since 1967. I think it's interesting that we should consider the fact that in Vermont, Chittenden County, Grand Isle, and Franklin were the only counties in our state that did not go down in population from 2011 to 2012. Clearly, there has got to be a need for some sort of business economic development so that our greatest product that we export out of our state is not our children, which is basically, as we all know, the case. If we put these two organizations together, I think we've got a chance of getting a much greater force to enact things that will make our quality of life better, not just today, but in the future as well. I think the fact that I can honestly say that there has been that diminishment of population in counties other than in the northwestern corner is an excellent reason why we need to get the synergy of putting the two organizations together. The functions that will be done will remain the same. The good work of the staff, the RPC, will continue on. Yes, there are more people at this meeting. That is a good first start because there are 23 towns, there should be 23 representatives. We're all in it together, we're all connected, we're all in central Vermont. And I think that central Vermont can use a little more opportunity for not just those of us who are already adults, but those of us who are teenagers, children growing up and might want to stay in this area, but obviously we need some sort of opportunity.
Ralph?
Well, Calais is not a big economic center. It's basically a bedroom community. So we are wondering if you could cite one or two examples how the town of Calais would benefit if these two organizations would consolidate.
Well, that'd probably be difficult to do, at least for me. One of the other committee members may be able to jump on that one. But
let me take a shot at that right off. I can think of one right off the bat. Now, I don't know how property taxes are in Calais, but what if Calais was able to have a few more residents that, let's say, had jobs in another outlying community? And let's say that your taxes in Calais were to decrease, and people had a little bit more disposable income in these tight times. That would be one benefit.
My experience is that the population does go up, however slightly, but the taxes never go down.
And I want to comment about that because I asked the same question to my town about whether taxes would ever go down, and they told me flat out, no, taxes will never go down.
Yeah.
Well, we all can vote, can't we?
Right. And in a town such as Calais, you're right, there's not a lot of economic activity there right now, but should the town decide that they wanted to encourage a lot more, I believe that the new entity would be better able to serve your community in terms of placing whatever you desired there.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, you base your concept on growth. There are communities that don't want to grow. They like it the way it is. They want to maintain that, and they like the rural character and the way it is.
Right. And no one's suggesting that they would be mandated to grow. That's not what this is all about at all. Let's not lose sight of regional planning's activities. One component of regional planning activities is, in fact, economic development. Many components of regional planning activities support not only economic development, but also municipal development, community development, human development, environmental development. Whatever type of, our activities are broad-ranging.
Yeah, so far we are very, very satisfied with the Regional Planning Commission, the way it serves our town. So we feel that that might be diminished because now we have to share with 12 other members.
Well, that's again, I believe a misconception that a lot of folks have about what the consolidation will really mean. We're not looking at a reduction of services anywhere. The Regional Planning Commission's services that they provide will continue to be provided at the same level they are provided. In fact, there's potential for betterment of those services by virtue of the energy and the synergy that we'll have if we do the consolidation. So there is no reduction of services happening. We're not diluting the personnel, the services, the resources are not being diluted amongst an additional 10 towns. They're not being diluted by any amount. In fact, the resource base available is being increased for all those towns. So I don't see how one could come to the conclusion that one's services from CVRPC would be diminished or reduced upon completion of the merger.
Mike, I believe you were next.
Yeah, I just was going to add in there. I mean, there are a number of places where the economic development can help. I mean, we've talked about planning for food systems, ag, forestry, creative economy, downtown infill, telecommunications. These are all things. And as a planner, I know how I address things and how I would address each one of those issues. And 5 years ago was the first time when I came to the city of Barre and I started working with Darren Winham, who was at that time Barre Area Development. That was the first opportunity I had to sit down on a daily basis and walk around Barre City and see how he saw things and how he saw the problems and what tools he had in his toolbox to fix. So when we look at a problem, he's going to see it and say, we need to fix this. I'm going to say we need to fix this, but he's going to see the tools that this downtown isn't going to get the vacancy fixed until we fix this municipal problem. I can fix a municipal problem all I want, but if we don't fix this other piece, we don't get that business to go in there. You needed both pieces working together, and until they both were together and really working together, you didn't have that, just catching and talking about the next big issue over lunch. I think if both boards were together, and merged, you'd have this collaboration on a daily basis where projects and issues that come up, there's going to be a direct link up with how economic developers, and you really have to spend time working with them to really kind of see the difference. They see the world, they see the barriers completely differently than a planner sees the barriers, and they're going to remove different barriers because they're looking at it from a business standpoint. What's the barrier to keeping this business from locating here? Why is it locating in Berry City and not Montpelier? Why is it locating in Berry Town instead of Berry City? It's a matter of understanding the underlying economics of the situation. And for a place like Calais, it may be talking about these food systems in ag and forestry. There are business opportunities out there, and what is the barrier to making that successful? What's the barrier to making the village of Calais a more vibrant village? If people want to talk about creative economies, you're talking economic development, not just planners.
There are 5 villages in Calais.
5 villages.
Yes.
I drive through 2 of them.
Okay, Bill?
I come up with something to say and then everything keeps changing back and forth. On the one hand, you have people saying that some of the villages like things the way they are, and the idea that if we, this seems like a sort of a moribund group because people aren't showing up or something. But again, I agree with what was pointed out, that to some extent it reflects the fact that that the status quo is somewhat what people like, especially when they want to keep it rural. And every time people that worked on this thing answer any of these questions, it really does sound like growth is being pushed. It may not be, but when you talked about this organization, talked about all the ways that it has in fact addressed development in different ways. So if it's been doing that, to merge with a group that pretty much focuses on nothing but development, which that sort of focus usually seems to me really to be just pushing for growth. It really seems like it's going to throw the balance of the planning organization heavily in favor of planning in terms of how can we remove barriers to growth. Say what you will, that really seems to be the gist of it. And again, as far as the why we started this goes, it was this thing about what the governor said, and the governor didn't say it, and somebody got a bee in their bonnet, and it just seemed like there was never really an opportunity to just say, okay, we don't have to do that now. It seemed like somebody got hold of it and said, what a great opportunity to build on this. And I can't help but think that you've done such a terrific job on it that, generally speaking, people are going to say, how can you deny such a terrific piece of work? But it feels like it really is watering down what the Planning Commission has been about. But I could be wrong. I feel.
Ed? Ed Hanna?
Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Do well.
You can't vote, so I'm not going to blame you.
I know what you're doing. I'm Ed Larson, former commissioner from Montpelier. I've been on the Economic Development Corporation now for 25 years, 6 years. I'm one of the senior members now, believe it or not. Me too. I came in as a fairly young person, but economic development. It isn't just a driving force for growth and development. I mean, it really is prosperity. Calais is a good example. CVEDC is very much alive in Calais right now. We are managing a USDA grant providing broadband to Calais and some of the rural communities. It's a pass-through grant that we are managing at CVEDC. If we were housed with the Regional Planning Commission, I would envision that perhaps the GIS planner could be front and center and working with that grant and perhaps enhancing the opportunity to, or to improve the way the program is moving forward. Just a piece of synergy that I could see happening that would, just a small example of how it could work. You know, we're about the quality of life. And it seems, you know, if you're in a community that likes what you have, you still need jobs. So you want to see prosperity. You want to see things happening. You need to see opportunities. Things change out there in the economy. Things change in the business world. And that's why the captains of industry, if you look at the names of the people on the board of directors of CVEDC, you have presidents of National Life, you have an owner of a compost plant, you have a consulting forester, you have you know, officers of development companies, of banks, you know, owners of small businesses, big businesses. These are the leaders of our business community that are sitting down together each month to learn about and talk about and share ideas on how do we improve our schools, how do we improve government, how do we work with the planners, how do we work with the developers that want to be here and stay here, or those that want to come here. We look at a whole host of issues, things that you would want to learn. And the things that you learn here, and has been a former commissioner for 10 years, I mean, those are things that the people on the CVEDC board would like to hear and learn. And so there's, I mean, you can come up with a lot of reasons why we should just stay separate and try to collaborate. But, you know, you can also look at, there is an opportunity here to look at how we really could be working together, and we could combine the resources. We may be a more attractive place for good development, for smart planners to want to be here, for top-notch thinking that improves our transportation infrastructure, our electric infrastructure, that brings renewable energy here in a good way, that talks about a whole list of issues that we all think about. But instead of, you talk about diluting the town power, you know, I thought about that a lot, you know, and it's a good argument. But, you know, if I was a select board member or a city council member and I appoint a commissioner to go on this board, you know, think about the fact that, yeah, maybe we have some power here and we can make a decision, but then other decisions are going to be made. And now if the economic development people have a whole different decision set than the ones that you have here thinking you all have control, you're now at a loggerhead. Excuse the term, I am a forester. You're at a loggerhead. Well, if we were all here together, we would be talking about that, and we could perhaps come to a resolution that would get us somewhere. Instead of now we're thinking about how we have strengthened our power here, but now we're totally diluted out there. We strengthened our power together. Think about those kinds of opportunities that we could see in this. Now, I was not a yayer. I was not all for this in the very beginning. I was asking the question of the board of directors of CVEDC. What is it that we are not doing now that we can do with this? And it took a lot of thinking and a lot of meetings with the other 9 people. And I came to this mind that, you know, this is an opportunity that probably will never come again. And I'm thinking, you know, it may be difficult the first few years, but I can just look, we could look back after 5 years and we could really see, yeah, we've done something. We've actually strengthened the power of the select boards and the city councils and our representation, because we're in it together on the ground floor. We're not thinking about, well, what are the other people thinking about what we're thinking about? We know, because we're here.
It's just that every time you say that, I think of all the times that people on both boards have spoken about how well both groups have worked together over the years and communicated and been on the same page, you make it sound as though that hasn't been the case, but that's pretty much what I've been hearing right along, that up until now, you know, people worked very well with each other and knew what was going on and everything.
I have a question for you, Ed. Is there a specific case you can think of where if the two organizations were working together, would have worked out better and would have increased economic development in specific cases?
Well, I just talked about the broadband one that could have had an opportunity there. I could probably come up with a few ideas. Right now, off the top of my head, I can't, but
yeah,
I think of a few ideas.
This process is going to go on.
When Walmart came, there was an interesting conversation that took place here. I happened to be sitting on both boards when Walmart wanted to come here. And there were some divergent views happening at the time. And yeah, that could have been a situation where a resolution of both bodies could have become one resolution with a better understanding of where everyone was coming from with respect to what was going on at the Berlin Mall. The expansion of the hospital was another one. If it wasn't for the economic development folks pushing this body to look at the CON that was denied by Howard Dean, the governor, to have a full-fledged meeting and discussion with the commissioner and the deputy commissioner about why is that. You know, there are some examples where not just collaborating, but actually, you know, putting the staff's minds together and the ruling boards together to get somewhere.
Okay. Anybody else have anything down this end? I know there have been a lot of questions.
Had hoped to say nothing this evening, but I think a lot of you know me better than that. I am not going to go point by point. I don't think that's for staff to do. The only thing I would like to bring to your attention is to dispel what I've read in the newspaper and what I'm hearing tonight, that there's an underlying feeling, and I believe the article in the paper said that there could be an attempt to gain more control of the planning and zoning process for those whose priorities are economic development. I would just like to stand on the, and it hurts me, because I would like to stand on the record of CVDC. Not in the 7 years that I've had the privilege of being the executive director, has one community, not one, in 23, ever felt that CVDC came and attempted to impose any economic development or infrastructure project on that community. That's the only thing that hurts, because that's misinformation. I've not had one community call. I go to communities that contact me, that request my services. And I don't go there with a predisposed concept. Neither does my board. I think I can speak for all 30 of them with any preconceived concept of what a community should look like. It's up to the residents to tell us. And then we try and help them see that vision. So that's the only thing I wanted to correct for the record tonight. Never would we ever, as an organization, there is no preconceived notion. Our guiding mission is the economic vitality of the region. And that means that all 23 of you are involved with continuing to ensure that vitality exists through infrastructure, through careful planning, and through thoughtful zoning and processing. So that's, I'm sorry, that was the only thing I felt I needed to make clear.
Yeah, and I think it's probably interpretation of a lot of statements that is what we need to resolve here, and that's
right.
That's part
but
of it.
I just wanted it on the record. We've
Yeah.
never been accused by any community of doing that, nor would we ever do it.
Hey, Laura?
It looks to me like because you want a voting block that will be permanent on the new commission, that you want changes in policy, and I would like to know what those changes would be.
I have no recollection whatsoever of any conversation of any type of policy change ever occurring during the year-long meetings from the Consolidation Committee. I don't believe the term policy change was ever uttered.
Okay, so
I don't know, I have no idea where you developed that position from, but
well,
it's not on the agenda.
because the Regional Planning Commission does set policy in some ways, I assume you have some ideas about what changes you would like to see. Because you were saying how planners are at loggerheads with developers. Sometimes you must have some specific examples.
Well, I think Ed was referring to the potential for that to happen. I'm not aware that that does happen a lot.
But it was in the report.
Could you cite the page? Let's put it in context then.
Okay.
Yeah, wasn't the best choice of words in that
What's that?
introduction. We did not bring an agenda to...
We did not.
As Economic Development Board, we did not bring an agenda that we're going to come in and try to change things, to change the direction of this commission. Stan put it very well. We're not about that.
But you will be part of a body now that does set policy.
And we positioned the bylaws in such a way that there are 9 votes that are perpetuated by a committee. It is our effort to restore what is good and valuable and important about CVDC as it is today.
Okay, so if you don't have specific policy changes in mind, why couldn't we just work as a partnership and share information instead of combining?
Well, again, we evaluated that model, and we, as the Consolidation Committee, as a group, said, okay, if we were to propose co-location and cooperation, we could sail this thing through and be doing it in 6 months. We agreed that would be, yep, we could handle that and it would work. The more we looked at it, the more we said, why? Why would we do that? That's not the best we can have. The best we can have is consolidation. And that's the reason we pursued that model. We did look at the co-location model. Absolutely we did. And absolutely we started developing an organization that was co-location. And basically we called it the 2-tree model, or I think that was the term we had for it. Because we had planning on one side and economic development on the other side, and very little actually intermeshing of the two, other than they were living in the same space. We discarded that as not being the best.
Why? I mean, I'm really curious.
For all the reasons contained in the report.
Well, I can't tell from the report exactly why you, I mean, the report, I know you did a lot of work and everything, but I cannot tell from the report exactly why you discarded just using some kind of partnership model.
And that we issued notes from every meeting. Probably if we went through all those notes, we could, retrace that history.
That was one of the first discussions that we went through, was the discussion of the model. And I think one of the points on that was somebody mentioned time with one of the governors in the past who had said to, don't plan for these, plan for success. Plan for that model that you want and push for that model that you think would be the best, because you'll never get it otherwise. And so that was why we went back from either co-location or the 2-tree model to go and say, well, really, if we wanted to do this and do this right, we would merge the two organizations and combine the functions. And at that point, we had no model. How would, how many board members, or how many that, if this was just, we're early, day one, and our approach is going to be, we're going to start from here, moving forward on the idea that we're going to have a single model with a single executive director, not 2 executive directors, and we're going to build towards that model and to see if that, to see if that works, and how would that work, and would it work at the end of the day. And the sense was, as we went along, that it was going to work, and it was actually would work quite well. So that was why we kept with it. And went and played out. So I mean, we could certainly go back and co-locate, but
I kind of disagree with Gunnar. That I don't believe that the study committee ever considered an alternative to a single organization. I think that's the way the charge was interpreted. That we're going to develop a model of how the functions of economic development and regional planning could be combined in a single organization, which is a little different than the question that Laura's asking about. Did we ever talk about collaboration? What kind of contractual arrangements might be made? What type of information sharing could be? And I think it's fair to say that our committee never really looked at that, because it was so intent on developing a possible model that Mike's describing of how the functions could be carried out by a single organization.
I think David's right. I think we never, based on the charge that we were given, we were charged with coming up with a model of a joint commission.
Correct,
and that was why we never really discussed, because that may have been the mission of the previous group, which was to maybe look at co-location.
But we did design a model that was effectively co-location and not a merger.
Yeah, it was merger light, I think we called it.
Yes, I think we did.
It was just a merger light where the two groups would be together.
Right. So, and I don't disagree that there has been cooperation amongst the group over the years. I'm absolutely would say that there certainly has been. I personally sat on a small committee that was, what do we call it? It was the Economic Development Corporation, the Chamber of Commerce and Regional Planning, and we met every month for several years, and we did a lot of joint projects together, and we had a lot of good outcomes. That's the experience that we can build on by merging these organizations.
Say, Terry?
So my question is to the people who worked on the committee, and also for anybody else who wants to speak to this. What do you see as the long-term picture of what Central Vermont looks like with this consolidation? As far as in the long term, how do you see the small towns? What do they look like? Because I know in the town of Marshfield, we have very active I'm going to say economics, meaning that there are a lot of people who own their own businesses in Marshfield. 25% of the population is self-proprietors. So I see a lot of economics happening there. But what do you see with Central Vermont regionally? I understand what it might look like in Barre or Berlin or Montpelier, where there already is a lot of economic opportunity, but what does it look like for the small towns?
Well, I think Ed pointed out earlier that small town economics are a major component of what the Economic Development Corporation deals with. Agribusiness is economics, logging is economics, farming is economics. All of those things are entwined. So we see better delivery of services to all the clientele. I don't see a significant change to the atmosphere in your town unless you want it. But personally, as I look at, and this isn't a vision that the committee talked about really, maybe it was touched on once, but I personally look at this consolidation and say, this would be a great avenue to bring in other regional players. Solid waste management would be a great add-on to this group. There's got to be 2 or 3 others out there, regional entities that operate independently that would be well served if they were talking more to other regional entities.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is a lot of communication with the infrastructure. So I just want to make a point, and Sam said something about that. This should be, from the townspeople giving input. But that's not the way I see it, and I want to let everybody know how I see it since I've gotten involved with the Planning Commission. I see the state saying, or the governor, the state saying, let's get transportation involved, and let's get solid waste involved, and let's get all these things involved, and we're going to tell the towns, the legislators all go and make laws, and then the towns are responsible to tell the people that we got to all be all together. And I just want to say, is that what is looking like here?
No, but I would suggest you're making my case. Because arguably, a regional entity, the regional commission, as it's named in the report, has more clout. It has more power. When state government comes along to say, towns, you will do this, this, and this, each individual town has a hard time putting up that fight. As a strong group, we stand up and say, no, we're not going to do it that way. Thank you. We're going to do it our way instead. Because we have the clout. Because we're a strong entity.
Okay, so you're saying regional has the clout to stand up to state saying that doesn't work?
Yes, I'm saying the stronger we are as a town-supported organization, the better chance we have of bottom-up planning instead of top-down. Absolutely. That's my position, and I strongly feel that way.
Okay. Tina?
I have, first of all, I want to thank the committee that worked on this long and hard. And I also want to thank them for sharing with everybody who chose to read them the minutes of their meetings, which was really helpful. I think I also don't find that a compelling case has been made for consolidation. I think it would be, I think one could work together, probably more than we do. We could have our staff and or commissioners going and hopefully making the same sort of contribution that Sam Anderson does at all of our meetings. She's a great addition to the Regional Planning Commission meetings, and I'm grateful for that. I think when you look at the two commissions, the two groups, they serve the same geographic area, but they do it in quite different ways. The clients of the Regional Planning Commission are the municipalities, basically. They're also the state, they're also the region, as was shown during what the region accomplished during the aftermath of the storms, of Irene and the other storms. They did great work, both for the regions and for the state as a whole. The regions independently and collectively. And that's terrific. But the major part of their work, when you look at the report, has to do with the services that they offer towns. And they offer those town services. Many of the towns just don't have other ways of getting planning done, of expressing their will, of figuring out what they want for their town. They don't have other ways than coming to the Regional Planning Commission to do that. So I think it's a really important thing. I honestly don't know that much about what CVEDC does, except I know that it tries to build, tries to increase business, and I'm totally in favor of increasing business. We all want business someplace around, so we want people to have jobs, and we want to have our kids be able, and our grandkids, in my case, be able to stay in town and in the community and work here. I think we can work together to do those things cooperatively. I'd a whole lot rather see cooperation. Possibly co-location would be fine if we could find a place that would fit both bodies. I do share the concern about the dilution of the town's vote and the town's interest in an enlarged commission. We already have lots of people who make great contributions to this regional commission who are involved in economic development in one way or another. We have an economic development element of our plan. The towns now have to have economic development elements of their towns. We've got a lot of that going on, and it should continue and get better. But I think, the statutory differences are really pretty bright. The towns have, the regional planning commissions have a great deal of statute describing what they need to do, what their jobs are. They have to address all the planning goals of the state. They have to have members from each town. They have to review the planning efforts of each town. They have to provide services to the towns. They have to do a lot that is required of them. They have a contract with the state. So does the Regional Economic Development Corporation. I haven't seen those contracts. Until I have to see those contracts, I need to know what the state requires each body to do to see if it looks as though it's going to be a good idea to actually combine them. We had a meeting here a year and a half ago when this issue first came up, and one of the representatives of a municipality who's not a current member of CVRPC, but who was a past member, said at the time, you know, CVRPC used to have at-large members. And I asked Sue about it, and there were 5 slots for at-large members in the past in CVRPC. And they included an agricultural seat, and correct me if I'm wrong, and a Chamber of Commerce seat, and the League of Women Voters, and 2 others. And I don't know what the 2 others were. And after a while, they simply decided that they didn't want to do that anymore. There wasn't any crisis or any big event that brought that about, but they just decided it didn't work. And it's easy to guess, and it may be wrong, that maybe the towns felt they were having, their votes were being diluted. So there was an attempt later on in the history of the Commission. The Commission was founded in '67, I think, and in the '80s, that's when they eliminated the extra seats. And in the '90s, apparently, they tried to bring it back. Some people proposed bringing it back. And that effort was defeated. So in a way, it seems to me that the Regional Planning Commission has kind of been there, done that, as far as having a mixed board. We already have people who are good economic development people on the board as it exists. I think that we have a board that has quite good attendance at our meetings. I think that people are interested, and they come, and they, for the most part, they do. I think they do a good job. And I think that having a larger board, you really tend to have a whole lot less participation. You're just not as important. It's not as important for you to be there, and I think people tend to drop their interest. And that may be wrong, I don't know, but it seems to me that sometimes Dave Strong did an interesting summary of the attendance at the NBDA board for a year, and found that the attendance wasn't very great. We have to have 23 members from the towns. If you're going to have additional members, you talked about an economic development committee, as I recall, in the bylaws. And then there were also there's going to be a large group there. And then there was going to be 9 members that were an economic development group that would be voting members. Is that correct? And so, combining the 9 economic development additional members with the existing economic development members that we are, or people who are in economic development as a profession. Here, I just wonder about whether the towns would be as really well represented as they are now. And I really feel that, and I talked with some people in the city of Montpelier about this, I really feel that it's important that we have more background information on both bodies. And I would really like us all to have available, if anybody else wants to look at it, if nobody else does, fine, but I would like to see 3 years of the financial reports of both bodies, 3 years of each of these things, 3 years of the activity reports of the bodies, and see how they really fit together. and 3 years of the state contracts. Because I think it's important that we fully understand how it works. I'm a mediator. You know, I really like to bring people together. I really love to bring people together to solve our problems together. But I think it's important that you do it with your eyes wide open and you look really carefully at what the circumstances are, what the issues might be. I think staffing is really important. I think if we have to have people who are skilled in both economic development and planning, and they're not necessarily the same people, though they could be. And I think we just have to have, I have to have significantly more information before I can go to the city council and suggest that I think it's a really good idea to do this. I can't do that yet.
Which is fine. We're here to educate not only you, but also hopefully the council will at least watch this on TV and perhaps glean some information from it. A couple of comments just in response to that. That was, for starters, we shouldn't be doing these things the same way we were doing them 10 years ago or 20 years ago or 30 years ago. I think if we are, we need to really look at that and say why. The world's changed. We're not living in the same world we were in 10 or 20 or 30 years ago. So why are we holding on to an old format that was created way back when? Maybe that's the right thing to do, but maybe it's not. We shouldn't oppose change for the sake of opposing change. The world changes. We should be willing to adapt and change with it. I understand you'd like to see, more study. The committee did a significant amount of study. And just as a clarification, we're not looking at two separate contracts from ACCD. We're not looking at one contract. We're still looking at two separate contracts. The Economic Development Committee will have a contract with ACCD, just as the corporation does now, and Regional Planning will have a contract, just as they do now, separate and distinct. We met with Pat Moulton-Powden, who was the then Deputy Director, I believe, of that organization, and she agreed that that was a workable solution, that would be an acceptable situation. Just so you're aware of those things. And I'm sure some folks would like to see this studied to death. We could study it ad infinitum. At some point, you have to say, this is it. This is what we have. We believe we're at that point.
Well, Ed had his hand up.
Thank you. Commissioner Ruth raised a lot of good points. Some of those points I would use as the same reasons why consolidation might make sense. What the commissioner did fail to bring up is the fact that there have been a number of efforts not only to add at-large members, but also to change your voting to population-based rather than one vote, one town, which would have benefited your city quite well. In fact, I've been part of that discussion a number of times. So, and that has been pushed back as well, probably rightfully so that the small communities have an equal voice. There's a lot of things. Your point about how we're different, we have different customers, to me, they seem to be the same. I guess I would, what I had to do, and maybe I'm unique because I have sat on both boards. In fact, I was on the executive committee of both boards at the exact same time, so perhaps I have a different filter than most folks. But, we seem to all want to work on our ideology of what we feel our roles are, but what I had done is I stepped out of it as, what if I was a customer? Who would I be? What would I look for? And, my first experience with CVEDC was as a business owner. I went to buy a sawmill business in Cabot, and Don Rowan was the executive director at the time, and he provided me with a wealth of information, tons of information, and just how, where resources are, how you can work on business planning, financing, all those different micro-business needs, crucial. And then being in a town government situation, you're writing your town plan, and you want some growth. Maybe you don't, but maybe you do. You want some growth. You'd like to put it over here. Well, will it work? Well, you know, economic development people might be able to look at that and tell you whether it will work or not. You know, there's collaboration that you do right on the spot right there. You know, I could be thinking of starting a new business. Let's say I found some rock in Duxbury, and it would make great monuments, and I want to start up a granite shed in Duxbury, okay? And I can quarry that rock, and I could really create jobs. Well, you know, I'm going to need to talk to the planners and to the economic development people in concert to figure out whether that is a viable idea or not. You know, and I could go to 2 different locations, try to get 2 different answers, or I could be talking to the same organization and getting it all at once. So I stepped out of the ideology of am I pro-business or am I pro-planning. I'm both. But I'm pro-customer service. I'm pro-giving the information to the customer on the spot, one-stop shop. And I can see the pro formas out 5, 10, 15 years where we're not 2 separate entities dealing with our finances, but that we're one strong entity that has found ways to really be solid and sustainable. We're sustainable now, both of us, vibrant organizations, but I could just see, you know, the ideologies will float. The NVDA is a good example, the one in the Northeast Kingdom. You know, when we talked to Steve Patterson, he said, you know, we don't even really kind of talk about us and them. We're really all one. And, you know, you get there, and that I can see as a vision where we could get. And I think it does restore liberty in the towns. I think it does bring freedom to the towns to make their own decisions and to make their own choices, because you're going to have the information right there. And if you folks don't know who CVEDC is, this is your chance to learn what we do and what we're about and who we serve. Because we serve the same folks you serve.
If I might just say also that the face of, the face of business, the face of prosperity, the face of economic development in general is changing as it relates to the towns. I think that we have seen a tremendous growth in individuals coming to the state of Vermont that want to live in towns like Calais, that want to work on their own, that want to be, self-employed and work out of their homes. This revolving loan fund that we did for the broadband development, we got it from the rural development, and we took it and we put it out there. We got broadband into a certain area. The money, it's a revolving fund. The money comes back to us when the customers get on board, goes back out into other communities. That kind of thing is extremely important, as we know, in Vermont, with a lot of areas that don't have that, but it's also very important for the kind of people that want to come into Vermont now and maybe work out of their homes. It's a global economy, it's an international business arena where you've got people who can sit in their house in Calais or Marshfield, and they can be in touch with the world. And I think we have to start thinking ahead about the kind of business and the kind of economics that are going to drive the future for us. I think that it's a whole new platform that's coming for us, and we have to be aware that if we don't get on board, we are going to be so far behind the times that we're going to lose all of our youth and all of our young people to other places where they can do better. And that's not to be extremist. It's a fact. And we have to grow with the times. And I think that this is an opportunity that we may lose, you know, for a very long time to come, to bring our forces together and to try work in conjunction with each other. We're not contentious individuals in the economic development arena. We are only out there to work and serve people that want us. Sam made a very good point, which was one that I would have made, is that I've been on this board for economic development for many, many years, and I have never seen us impose our will on anybody that doesn't want us. But believe me, there's a lot of places that want us, and I think as time goes on, we're going to see more and more towns that maybe don't want a factory or a real big business entity, but look at all the liquor companies and the beer breweries and the agribusiness, the organic farmers. Those are businesses that we help. We do a job fair that helps put people into these jobs where they're needed. We encourage job development. We do the workforce development. We assist in that to help train people when they come into the area, or a business comes into the area and needs people with certain qualities and abilities, that's part of what we do. And those are people that are out there in your communities. Your young people coming out of school, when they're coming out of the high schools, we can help provide specialized training for them if that's what they need. But the whole point being that it's a very much of a changing face on not only the economy, but on the towns and who your population is. And I think a lot of us need to start thinking for the future and not get stuck in one place where we just don't feel we can work together and try to meet the needs of all these different faces that are going to approach us. So,
Mike?
Just quickly, I mean, to get to some of Tina's comments on if there are two things that pretty much came out very, very clear in our analysis, which might save you some, by all means, look at all of the 3 years of economic or budgets and all that stuff. But the budgets of both of the organizations, neither organization is bailing out or saving the other. Both organizations have hundreds of thousands of dollars in reserve. These are two very healthy organizations, and there is not an economic reason for merging them from the standpoint of we've got one healthy organization that's here to kind of help save the other one. These are two very healthy organizations financially and could continue to continue on separately from that standpoint. So really the budgets really kind of came out as not an issue between the two. And then the other thing that kind of came out, the technical and legal hurdles. When I started on the consolidation, that was my number one concern was the legal. I didn't know if it was possible to merge these two organizations. And it's clear that we can. And so really, what all the commissioners and select boards and everybody have to consider is really, it's a political and a policy decision. As far as I'm concerned, it's really political and policy. There's no legal reason why we can't do it. There's no technical reason why we can't do it. And from a budget standpoint, we're going to be healthy together. We're going to be healthy apart. It really comes down to kind of what we're talking about here, which is more the philosophical, political decision as to do we join? Are we better together? Or are we better apart?
Dave?
I think I liked a lot of Tina's comments. The fact that we have business represented here among the membership, Larry, Gunnar, Byron are all involved heavily in business activities. Chamber of Commerce is already here. So to that extent, there already is economic development perspectives, and it's no accident that the members of the coalition, the Consolidation Study Committee, came from those kind of members who have those overriding interests in economic development. I kind of disagree with you, Mike, about no economic reason. I mean, it's true both organizations are viable, but our budget of the Regional Planning Commission is 2 or 3 times, and our staff is 2 or 3 times. So, there's a lot of need for economic development, and I can understand their interest in trying to get access to greater resources to promote that activity. But I don't know if that's the right way to go about it. Maybe there should be more state funding for economic development corporations rather than having them tap into planning resources that we have here. I agree that there should be more studies, because it's a serious, very serious, important decision. And I think we should have taken a closer look at the Northeast Economic Development. Steve Patterson's organization, he never came to one of our meetings. And I guess he talked to the Economic Development Corporation, but we never talked to the members. We heard from the executive director how great, but there are like 30 or 40 members, and there was no attempt to find out how satisfied they were with a large organization. The attendance is only 50% of their members at their meetings. So that's one of the reasons that I'm apprehensive about enlarging the size, because I think participation could drop off. So if there's still interest, and I've just heard the only people who've really spoken in favor are members of the committee who supported it, and guests from economic development. But if there is enough interest in going ahead, I think we should think about hiring a consulting company to look into some of the questions we have. I think it's unfortunate that although we did have some money in our budget, we didn't use it for any professional consulting services. And I think we should develop a request for proposals, and we should earmark $20,000. We should get both organizations to contribute and identify a list of questions that we think still need to be looked at. And I agree, we don't want to rush into it. I agree with Gunnar on that. So those are just some of my thoughts.
Yes.
Just a reminder, I'm from East Montpelier. And I guess, Gunnar, maybe I'm addressing it correctly to you, and you'll redirect if I need.
Sure.
My question is, as a select board member, granted I'm fairly new, but I have been active with the select board for several months now, and I'm a little concerned that we haven't seen a more aggressive, maybe, outreach. And maybe it's early in the process, and I did take time to read, and I'd like to look specifically at page 13 of your report, if that's possible. It talks about the next steps, and I'm quite intrigued, and I'm looking forward to the agreement of merger and the kind of the mechanics of the merger and how that will proceed. And if you can speak to that, that would be great. And then as a follow-on question, if you can tell me, what do I need to do as a select board member to get somebody like you to come and speak with us so that we can, you know, have the information that we need in order to make an informed decision and tell our rep, you know, how to represent us.
Sure.
So thank you.
Okay, so in terms of how do you get some of us to come and make a presentation, all you have to do is ask. So we
okay,
can,
I'm asking.
We can work that out. We'll have to get to the nuts and bolts of how we're going to facilitate that in terms of scheduling and whatnot, but that's fine. We were anticipating some towns would hope to have a personal presentation, and we're prepared to do that.
Great.
As far as the aggressiveness of our outreach, we never put ourselves in a position of strong advocacy. We were a study committee. Our charge was to create this. We put out notes from every meeting. We circulated them to, I believe, an email list of over 200 people on a weekly or a bi-weekly basis every other week when we had a meeting. So we made a strong attempt to keep the information flowing. We certainly wanted complete transparency to our process, and we believe we did a pretty good job at that. So yeah, but we were never going to be aggressive about it. That was never our charge or our position or we had enough to do, quite honestly. As far as the next steps part of it, the things like the agreement of merger and whatnot, that's all the details. That's the nuts and bolts, the checking accounts, the letterhead, the this, the that. There's a long list of things that need to be detailed and figured out exactly what has to happen should this consolidation occur. There's really a lot of work to be done left to make it happen. The primary issue there, again, is that we are volunteer groups, both sides of this equation. Without a commitment from the organizations that they are willing to move forward with this, I don't think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be willing to put in another year of putting this information together. We've done our job. We now need, we believe at least, that we've provided enough information and will bring that information to individual towns as desired. But we believe we've done enough so that people can decide whether or not this is something they want to move forward with.
So can you speak to the procedure itself? Because as a select board member, what I'm thinking is that there's going to be a vote to go or no go.
Yep.
And then we look at an agreement after the fact, and I'm a little nervous about that. I'd like to be more informed up front. So maybe it's procedural that I don't understand.
Yeah, I think procedurally, how this starts out would be with an MOU between the two organizations, which would be an agreement that we're going to move forward with the merger, and that with an understanding that there was a lot of work left to be done. Without that MOU in place and an understanding that both organizations desire this outcome, I don't think anybody's going to do the work to get there. That MOU is not in my mind at least, and again, guys, if somebody's seeing this differently than I am, feel free to chime in. That MOU is not the end of the story. That is not make it a merged organization. That brings us on the path. There are potentially one or two things that could derail it before you get to merger after you do the MOU. But what those things are, I can't speak to. I'm not aware of any lurking issues, certainly. We tried to get them all, but we're not done yet. There is still the nuts and bolts, the agreement merger put together, the details to be sorted out, and various things that need to be done as listed in the next steps. So as I see the process, it's an MOU between the two organizations agreeing that we do want to merge, and then putting together those details, and then would be the final vote to change the bylaws.
So
and at some point, the Economic Development Corporation actually has to dissolve.
So there would be, after the formal agreement of merger and all of those nuts and bolt decisions have been made, there would in fact be a second vote.
Yes.
In a matter of, okay.
There has to be.
Okay.
Yeah, we have to amend our bylaws.
That's what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Thinking, okay.
Yeah, Gunnar, would you explain the MOU?
Memorandum of Understanding. That just puts it in writing that both groups are agreeing that they understand that this is what they want to do. They're putting it in writing. They're moving forward. It gives people the understanding that yes, we want all this. We're not just spinning our wheels doing all this work.
So would the general membership of the CVRPC have to vote in favor of this MOU? Or
I would suspect so, but I'm not sure that I'm the right person to ask that question to, or the one that should make that decision. I believe, in my personal opinion, yes, that's what should happen. The commission should vote either to move forward or not. If they vote to move forward, then it's with the understanding that they want the merger to occur.
What role would the executive committee play to move this forward to the MOU stage where the body would vote?
Well, the next step would be to draft the MOU. And I guess I haven't thought that one through, Don. I'd like to consider that a bit before I answer it. Unless someone...
Technically, this report is in the hands of the executive committee. This is our report at this point. As a member of the executive committee as well, this is our report. The committee has, the merger committee has put together their document and presented it to the executive committee. So that's really a question for us. What do we do with it? How do we want to handle it?
Right.
So the executive summary would act as basically the MOU?
No, the executive committee. This is the executive committee's document right now, so it's up to our executive committee to decide how this is going to play out over the next couple of months. And our decision so far was to open it up, get the document, open it up to the general board to start taking questions and comments, and then we'll have to make some decision at some point as to how this moves forward. Is it a 3-month process, a 6-month process, a 9-month process? What do we need to, what questions do we need to answer before we can sit down and say,
and I should
raise your
clarify,
hands, in favor,
my comments to East Montpelier, but as RPC reps, we're responsible to the executive committee, and if our executive committee tells us, no, we don't want you going out and doing these dog and pony shows, obviously we don't do it. I'm working on the premise that the executive committee will encourage that, but...
Okay. Brother Larry?
I started on the Regional Planning Commission representing Williamstown in 1991. I think it was 1996. Transportation Advisory Committee was formed, and I've been on that since then. I've been on the Act 50 Committee, I don't know how long since that was formed. And I've been on the Williamstown Select Board for 6 years, or almost 6 years. I've been here for a little over 5 years. So I've seen it from both sides. I also own my own business since 1976. So I've seen it all from all angles. I've seen people work for me that struggle because they make just a little bit too much money to qualify for Section 8 housing and things like that. And I've worked with people who've done really well. And Central Economic Development Corporation is not an evil type of transaction or entity. It promotes businesses. It helps people locate businesses. It helps the economy. It helps provide jobs for our kids and that. It not necessarily means they're going to build a whole bunch of new stuff everywhere. That could be infilling vacant buildings or businesses have left. You look around this room, a lot of people here. Like Gunnar said, I believe it was Gunnar that said, a year and a half ago before this all started, you couldn't fill that side of this table right here. Most of the meetings approved the minutes. There wasn't a quorum. And if there wasn't a quorum of the executive committee, they didn't get approved until the next meeting. That went on for several years. Once in a while, it'd be enough, but in most cases, there wasn't. You know, people have been here a long time to test that. This thing brought out all these people, it's a good thing, but I get a feeling when this all fizzles out or whatever, whichever way it goes, it's going to go back the same old. You can shake your head all you want.
I'm shaking my head no, because I didn't come here for that at all. I came here because, to come here.
That's good. I hope you stay. But I've seen it with, I've been here a long time. And when this concept first came about by Governor Douglas, I thought about it, and that's why I volunteered to get on the first committee, because I thought this could be a good thing. Get this thing re-energized, get, on the Transportation Advisory Committee, going through Act 50 with my own business and being on the Act 50, you see all this redundancy. Every organization overlaps. Everybody gets paid. It all costs money. It costs whoever's trying to do something money. And it all end up the people that are buying houses or buying groceries or buying whatever from business. They end up paying for it. So it's got to come back somehow. It's not that the person's going to just spend all that money and not get paid back for it somehow. It all goes back to the consumer. And I've seen this from all sides, and I absolutely can't see where the Regional Planning Commission has anything to lose by this. I think it has a very, very good chance to gain. Like in the Act 50 process, it is going to have more clout. If you got a business that wants to come in, or doesn't necessarily have to be a business, it could be a housing project, whatever. You better gain a lot more respect from people that want to invest in that over the three-member board and Act 50 committee. Like the Regional Planning Commission works, they know areas, they work with communities where they want development to occur, whether it be commercial or housing or industrial or whatever. The economic development part of it works with people that are looking for places to put stuff. A lot of times, just like the development is driving the Planning Commission. They want this project up here, can that fit there, I mean, it could work in reverse. You could have this all laid out, so okay, if somebody comes in with this thing, this community would like to have something like that, or this community wouldn't want something like that, but we have this other area over here would fit perfect. And, you look around this room, I think the average age here is 50 plus at least. I mean, our kids are leaving. It's sad to say, but our kids are leaving because there's nothing here. I can show you, I got works in progress sheets, and all you see is CVS pharmacies being built, convenience stores being built, elderly housing projects being built. Very rarely you see something that's creating jobs, other than a construction job building that. I mean, what are we going to have 20 years from now? I mean, like Gunnar said, I believe it was Gunnar said that we've got the status quo worked fine 20 years ago, but we got to move forward. We got to get this thing working together so we don't have so much overlap. Everything you have so much overlap.
Let me answer your issue with the membership showing up and how we get such a good turnout. I don't think that's going to change because the man sitting next to you is the vice chair. And he's the man that's going to keep all these smiling faces coming back. I think we'll be in good shape.
We've had a lot of good chairs and vice chairs in the past.
Okay, well, I want to make a point about as we move forward to the future. I hear what people say when they say it, but I want to use agriculture as an example about what happens when you move forward and then you decide maybe it's not so good an idea to have such big business in agriculture with big companies with big patents and big chemicals, and maybe what we want to do is go backwards to organics. So I just want to be real careful when we say about the future and going with the way the world is going, and this is a different kind of world, because we may want to say, no, that's really not healthy for our communities. Maybe it's not real healthy to move people into centers, into villages and towns, and keep the rural character outside, really rural with not a lot of people, because maybe by moving everybody in town we spread epidemics more rapidly. Of course, then we're going to have the healthcare situation where a lot of people will all, then have to go to the doctors, and this all really promotes a lot of money. And I am a business owner and have been for some time. I choose not to have a lot of money. That's me. I know that a lot of people like money, and that's them, but I just want to be real careful that we don't go, yes, the future, money, and then kick ourselves later for the problems that we might cause ourselves.
Well, thank goodness we have the RPC. We can keep doing that and head off these disasters. And then I find it interesting too, in that we come to these meetings, these commission meetings, but really what is going on? What really is the fact is we simply come to these meetings, we hear reports on what the actual staff is doing, where the rubber hits the road. That's what's really going on. And then we, maybe every once in a while, if there were to be an Act 250, we'd have our Act 250 committee actually look at something, but there's not much to look at. And then it's interesting to me that our municipal plans and our regional plan requires an economic component. And I look at our wonderful staff, and I have great respect for the staff of the RPC, because they do wonderful things. We don't have an economic person. So gee, isn't that interesting that we have an opportunity, that we're under a mandate to have an economic component. We don't have anyone who's got that background. But oh geez, there's the EDC. They can fit in and fill that. And I've heard many concerns voiced about the loss of the municipal voice, that the towns are going to suffer from this. There's not one thing that's going to change in terms of statutory requirements that the RPC is required to support the towns through. Those will all continue. The work of the EDC will be under contract as well. But now we've got the two organizations together. And like Larry says, why do we always have to have so many organizations, so much overlap? It just gets expensive for taxpayers. And here we have an opportunity to gain a synergy that can very well head off their concerns. All these things happening. We got good planners, we could get economic people, all of us are here because we actually care about Central Vermont, we care about our region. I haven't made too much money sitting and doing all this stuff, but I've certainly gotten a great sense of satisfaction of being around fellow spirits who actually really do care, and outside of themselves. And so I hear some of the concerns that are expressed, And I encourage people to really please know and trust, but verify by reading this report in detail, that great cares and attentions have been made to protect the statutory obligations of both of the potentially merging entities. So that exactly what we're talking about, and I've heard again and again said, that there is going to be a diminishment of what our beloved towns get in terms of what we like from the RPC. That's simply not the case. And please read the report in great detail and walk it, and it's interesting, and it's wow, they thought about that.
Bill?
Yeah, I want to say that there do seem to be a lot of business-oriented people here, but the more I get to be here, the more I feel that at least they're Vermont business people. In fact, they're Montpelier area business people. It's not so scary. But when you talk about, and I hear this a lot, there's just so many hoops to jump through, and there's so many barriers in the way, and if we could smooth that out, and that's probably true in a lot of cases, again, and maybe in a Montpelier sort of way, in a Burlington, in a Vermont sort of way, that might happen, but I think it's understandable that a lot of people like myself would be very wary of somebody who's pushing to remove barriers, in the sense that what I see, not only this country, but the entire world seems to be now being driven by huge corporations and entities who would like nothing more than to, and work very hard to make sure that barriers and hoops are removed as readily as possible, so that they can just move right in. And maybe that's not what's going to happen here, but it feels like a foot in the door kind of thing. And I think anytime that there seems to be what seem to be ideological differences maybe between people here, I get a sense that it's kind of like, we'll never talk ideology. This is nuts and bolts. I don't know. And when you talk about, we've never had a complaint from a community. We never tried to force anything on a community. Absolutely, I'm sure that's true. But again, ideologically, when you have a group of people whose complete input is, yeah, this is just going to be a great idea for you, and let's remove the barriers and put these things in these places here. I don't know, you don't have to force that on somebody, you just have to make it look more desirable than maintaining the status quo or moving backwards or looking at some other aspect of it.
So I just want to respond to the barriers, because I'm the one who probably mentioned it more than anyone else. I mean, the barriers to development or barriers to achieving some goals aren't necessarily removing regulatory hurdles. When I arrived in Barrie, you had 25-30% vacancies in the downtown. The barriers are, how are we going to meet ADA standards? How are we going to get fire protection, sprinklers into these buildings? How are we going to, what are the barriers? The parking. These aren't removing barriers for McDonald's and Walmart to come rolling in. These are removing barriers to buildings that are sitting vacant in our downtowns, and why aren't they being redeveloped? And the answers from the economic developers is, well, the problems were laying in the municipal side, and the municipalities look at it, and there are problems that they couldn't fix because there's the economic development. And it wasn't until we both sat down to look at the table that says, there are things I can do to help you as an economic person or as a property owner, to go and say, how are we going to take care of filling your second story or your third floor of your downtown building? And then there are things that I couldn't fix, but the economic developer can come in and say, I have access to capital. I have access and connections to VITA. I know of loans that I can help connect you to the business development that you need to get something in there. So while I can work with the property owner to help get sprinkler grants, the economic developer is working with VITA and these other organizations and these other things to bring in money to help with the capital and the getting things started. And then we've got other programs to deal with things like, okay, we've got startup costs. You know, the whole problem, it's easier. I could build this. I could just go up to Berlin, plop this building down in the middle of a vacant green field that used to be a farm field. I'm good to go. I'd rather be in the downtown. We work to try to go and say, how do we remove the barriers to being downtown? How do we remove the barriers to make some of these projects happen? And these are generally local landowners and local entrepreneurs. We don't have to spend a lot of money to help somebody who's bringing in bags of money from out of state. We're usually trying to, when we're talking about removing barriers to development, it's not, gee, let's get into the zoning bylaws and make all these permitted uses or throw the zoning out altogether. That's not what we're talking about when we're talking about removing barriers. We're talking about trying to remove the economic, to try to make the economics work. The economics will take care of itself. People will fix up all these buildings if that's the most profitable way of doing things. And you have to sometimes find out what's the missing piece. Sometimes it's a brownfield. If we clean up the brownfield, the economics will take care of the rest. People come in, they'll invest the money, they'll create the jobs and make the downtown stronger. And you know, a lot of what working economics and planning together is a lot of why there's been a lot of success in the city of Barrie over the past couple of years, is because we've started to remove each one of these pieces to try to fix these problems. And
that's what has happened in fact for you, is that you have been able to work with both of those organizations and get what you needed from them. And if there's a chance that when you try to put them together you lose some kind of vitality on either side, then...
Yeah, exactly. That would be a practical nitty-gritty sample of how would the consolidated organization do better than what has been done in Barrie, which I admire greatly. And so would that mean that now the consolidated company provides only one person that does both, or do you still use one, from the organization, one that's specialized in economic development and one in municipal zoning bylaws and stuff like that? So why would it be beneficial to have one organization that employs those two different things? Or will you give that up and have only one person doing both things? I'm trying to find a reason.
David had his hand, then it was Gunnar, and then we'll go back to you, Ralph.
I think it's been a real good discussion. But I wanted to respond to something Byron said. He said that because the statutory responsibilities remain the same, we wouldn't have to be concerned about the change. But in fact, the question of the allocation of resources to implement the statutory resources, that could change with different interests directing the regional planning organization. So, and that's a legitimate concern, I think. Also, early on, Gunnar said that it's a resource-neutral process, but actually, I don't think it's actually included in the report, but we did find that towns are currently contributing to the Economic Development Corporation in the amount of, I think, about $14,000. And if there was a merged organization, they would have no reason to, since they're already getting assessed for participation in this regional organization, they would have no reason to make that voluntary contribution to a separate organization that no longer exists. So actually, the early projection was that we would lose $14,000 in revenue, which is the current municipal contribution to the Economic Development Corporation. So that would have to be found somewhere. I just wanted to point that out.
Gunnar?
Sure. Actually, I wasn't planning on responding to that one, but
I'm sure you can.
I'll try to. The hour's getting late too, so I'll try to make this quick. As far as those resources go, yes, we also are looking at opening up the commission to a membership avenue that hasn't previously existed, which would obviously be potential revenue that we don't currently see. And we also did talk about that. Yes, we may need to raise the municipal dues a little bit to account for what the municipalities currently contribute to EDC that won't be there anymore. More importantly, what I was hoping to mention was that we've talked about these removal of barriers and development and whatnot as it relates to the merged entity. I think it's important for folks to understand that Central Vermont Regional Planning is one small cog in a rather large wheel that any development project needs to go through before it gets permits. It isn't like this is the end-all, say-all. I don't agree with the sort of sky is falling attitude that has been presented a little bit here in terms of this, the developers taking over. Because we don't have that big a role in a project. A project still needs to go through all the other permitting hurdles. It needs to be a good project that the community wants, with or without regional planning. So the idea that developers or economic folks will steamroll through and change policy and get projects built where they're not wanted, I believe to be unfounded. I think realistically there are a lot of processes that need to be dealt with. And if your project's not worthy of being built, whether or not regional planning supports it will not make the difference. So that's all.
Next.
I was sort of struck looking at the board structure for the proposed organization, and I understood what it was that you were talking about and why. But in looking at the other regional planning commissions in the state, most do have non-municipal members on the board, not all, but most do. And they vary in terms of the proportion. Sometimes it's only 3 or 4, and in one case it's up to 10. But usually in these sorts of situations, it's not all from one sort of broad category of interest. That there'll be somebody who, maybe the Chamber of Commerce, maybe the Economic Development Corp, but usually somebody who has a background in housing, and given that the regional plan says housing and particularly affordable and workforce housing are important issues for the region, that would seem to be an important issue for this region. Usually a seat that's sort of conservation kind of oriented, some that get into arts and culture, but usually it's a mix where there is. And even looking at Northeastern Vermont Development Association, agency, whatever it is, NVDA, I mean, their board has got all the municipalities. It's got a handful of other folks. It's got 5 seats for the industrial park, and then it's got everybody who's in that region's legislative. It's like, I don't know where they meet that they put all these people in it, but I mean, it's usually something that's it's mixed up a little more. It's not such a big block of one interest, and I understand that looking at economic development brings in a lot of different sorts of issues. A lot of the issues in terms of getting in affordable housing are frankly the business economic aspects of getting a housing built. I get that, but it does seem that it's kind of concentrated, and I wondered to what extent the committee thought about other kind of voices on the board. I mean, you say you were looking to how do you get the best organization you can be. Well, what about thinking a little beyond just the 2 existing organizations and thinking a little broader in terms of what other voices could be brought into the board?
Sure. We had that discussion. And in fact, what the report describes is an additional 3 seats on the commission that are filled from the membership at large. The membership at large are those groups of individuals, entities, businesses, nonprofits, whoever wants to pay a a fee of a dues of a certain amount. That structure would be similar to what CVEDC has now, where a sole entrepreneur would pay a small fee to join, a company with 5 employees pay something larger, and National Life writes a big check. Something similar to that. And then for belonging to the commission, there would be 3 seats at the table for that general membership that the nominating committee would nominate from that entire group. It would be incentive for those people to join and bring their voice to the table, because it would allow them the ability to get to an actual director seat. So we did have that discussion, and we did provide a mechanism to bring those groups in. Yeah. So.
Okay, so we're running down on time, so did you want to finish your response?
I just wanted a follow-up. I mean, sometimes it's a business or an individual who brings that voice, but frequently it's another organization, and so it could be, you know, and I'm just sort of thinking here, but say Central Vermont Community Action Council. I mean, they have a very specific role that they serve this region for. Well, just being practical, why should they have to pay dues so that they could be heard in this kind of an organization where we should be inviting them in?
They can still come to. They don't have to pay the dues and belong. They can come to every meeting. These are open meetings. They always have been. So nothing changes there. Those folks can certainly come to every meeting, just as Sam does. She comes. She sits. She listens. She contributes. We would love to see those other organizations at this table regularly. But we can't give everybody a seat, and we came up with the structure that we came up with for a lot of what we felt were very good reasons.
Hey, Ed, some closing words?
I just want to say, you know, we're looking at the economic development folks as a block. I just want to point out that the 25 years I've been there, we are a reflection of our community. We are as diverse as the people in this room. We are as diverse as the community that we all serve. You know, we're not a voting block. We don't agree on everything. We have excellent discussions, and we have excellent debates amongst us as business owners and business leaders and those who choose to be on the Economic Development Corporation board. So, you know, it's not really like we're coming in with a big voting block that's going to have some influence. We'll have influence just like you have influence, and that's what we're going to benefit from, is those conversations, like the wisdom that came from the Commissioner of Marshfield, concerned about consolidating people in healthcare. I'd love to hear about that. We had a great conversation led by Carol about the fact that we're getting older. We got to change how we're doing our housing. That was a wonderful conversation at the economic development level. If I was an entrepreneur in housing, I would start thinking about new business plan because of those conversations. That's where this community would benefit from a diverse board like we could have.
Okay, I think we've pretty much all had our say. And so I think we'll close this off for now, and Gunnar, you'll have some people who will want to have you speak to their select board and so on. So I think this was really good. It was a really good way to get things out front.
I recognize Josh Fitchie was here too. He just came in a little late. He's the vice chair of the Consolidated Committee.
Good. Welcome. And thank you everybody for being here, and you know, I'm sure we'll all be meeting again soon in the future, and all of you new members will be looking to see your smiling faces back here.